Hi there. The discourse that I'm going to do now is on the spiritual attribute of compassion. Now, I think most of you probably know what compassion is. That feeling of, well, it's not pity, it's more than pity. It's more than sympathy, and it's more than empathy. Perhaps it's all three of those to some degree. So it's like the highest. We might think, oh, isn't empathy higher than compassion? No, empathy is that ability to really feel the other person's feelings, to really walk in their shoes, feeling it. That's a totally different thing. It's compassion is at a higher level than that. You may empathize with those you are feeling compassion towards. You may also feel sympathy for those you feel compassion towards. It is even possible that you may feel pity, although when we look at the nuance of language, at least as I am looking at it, to me, and you may not agree with me, but pity, I don't know, nobody seems to want to be pitied. It has it seems to have a negative kind of energy. And sometimes you can be very nasty when you say, I pity that person. It's like so, but there can still be an element in it, I guess, but let's not sort of waste our time there. Most of us like it if we're going through a rough time and somebody does express sympathy for what we are going through. That seems to be uplifting, whereas pity seems to bring you down somewhat. Empathy is when somebody really, really gets it. They may not have experienced it themselves, but they do. They've tuned in. Compassion has certainly an element of love. Even one perhaps could say unconditional love to a certain extent, although some people may have conditions on their compassion. So we could spend a lot of time just delving into what exactly is compassion. If you're interested, take what I've said and contemplate and meditate on that. If not, just take it to what you feel it is. But quite often, we see things going on in the world, in other parts of the world, people suffering. Immediately, we often sometimes tear up. That's our compassion. We just feel such compassion for these people, and we often want to help. So maybe we can't help. But when we feel compassion for those around us, those close to us, we are often in a position where we can help. And that is where sometimes we fall into a trap of helping too much. Now, you might think, what? How can you help too much? Well, you can if you're so compassionate towards somebody. You want to rescue them. And maybe they need rescuing at that particular time, and you stepping in and rescuing them is a wonderful thing. And your compassion has done something very constructive. You've actually acted on it, and you've done something, and you've helped someone. It's when a person's compassion compels them to be continually propping someone up or something up, that they're being drained either monetarily or energetically, time-wise, in some way. Their compassion is being used against them. Maybe not even consciously, but they're just giving, 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 and becoming drained and depleted. Okay, and whoever they're giving to may be just lapping it up and staying exactly the same. And they're not growing, they're not learning, not becoming independent. There is a saying about give a starving person a fish to feed them. That takes care of it for now. But if you teach them to fish, then they can look after themselves. Okay, well, the compassionate person has given them the fish and keeps giving them the fish, does their fishing for them and keeps giving them the fish. But the compassionate person also recognizes that, oh, okay, this isn't really helping that person, because what if something happens to me and I can't keep giving them the fish? If I can't keep doing the fishing for them, who's going to do it for them? You know, they'll be left to have to do it themselves and they don't know how to. How will they? They'll flounder. How will they cope? So that's when the compassionate person needs to bring in a bit of dispassion, to just bring that emotion that they're feeling, because they will be in an emotional state by thinking this, bring that down to a neutral level, so then they can think clearly about, okay, how can I break this cycle of dependence that I've got going here? How can I really help this person now? How can I help them to be able to do whatever it is that I'm doing for them, for themselves? And you're still a compassionate person. And it's not going to be easy to implement what you're doing, but you'll do it still feeling compassionate towards that person. So the energy that you're putting towards that person while you're trying to disengage them from their dependence on you is still, it's all being done with compassion. But there are times when you have to slip into dispassion because they may be pulling at your heartstrings or making you feel guilty. So that's where you need dispassion to come in to help you to be strong. And yeah, they may see you as severe because you've temporarily hidden your compassion from them, but that's all you've done. You've only hidden it, you haven't stopped it. So this sort of interplay between compassion and dispassion, it plays out backwards and forwards on the spiritual path. It seems to be a key area, and it certainly builds our spiritual strength. It really does. We become really strong spiritually in that continually going from compassion to dispassion, trying to get into that middle point. Probably one of the hardest things for a spiritual person to do, because generally speaking, spiritual people are filled with compassion, but they forget to have compassion for themselves. They have compassion for everybody, and they forget to have it for themselves. So you're important too. So remember that, to have that compassion for yourself. So there's not too many people on the spiritual path who would actually need to develop compassion. As seems logic to me, because being compassionate is one of the hallmarks, isn't it? Somebody who's just starting to awaken spiritually. Every indication I'm getting from inwardly, or however you want to call it, is that it's probably one of the first things that starts people on the path. And you'll leave, like, what we would call non-awakened people, non-spiritually awakened people, still have compassion. But true, if people haven't got it, not at all, but they're putting themselves out there as being this wonderfully spiritual people, well, you can probably stick a question mark over that. So the spiritual attribute of compassion is probably, we're not really looking to attain compassion. We've more or less got it. What we want to do is, certainly separate it out from empathy, sympathy and pity. Empathy is not one of the spiritual attributes, but it is an attribute that a lot of spiritual people have, but it's just not one of these, but it is connected to the spiritual attribute of compassion. And that's something, a little aside here, I hope I don't lose my spot. All of the spiritual attributes, if you take any one of them, you can probably work out lower representations of them, or lower vibrational representations of them, using this, how we've done compassion, as a bit of a guide to it sort of gives us a guide there. That's if you want to. You don't have to. But some people like to do that and they learn a lot from it because that's how they learn. So I'm not pushing particular learning methods at people. I'm giving out information, knowledge, and then the guides throw in a bit of wisdom for us to get you started. But it's your own way of working that'll help you to grow and evolve with these spiritual attributes. So now I don't know where I left off on my little side, but it doesn't really matter. What I do want to say is that you're not developing compassion. What you're doing is learning to control it, learning to master it, because our compassion can be our weakness. It can lead us to being used by others. And that is not part of what we are supposed to be doing as we are evolving spiritually. We are not evolving into people who use others. We're not going to that other extreme. But spiritual people are often used by others because of their natural compassion. Okay? So what you're learning to do is to identify when your compassion is letting you down. You're not meant to stop feeling it. You're just at times meant to stop acting on it in a certain situation. Somewhere else, it may be totally, and one would hope there would be a lot more of those times when it's, keep feeling it, keep acting on it, you're making a real big difference. And that's because you might be teaching people something so they can lift themselves up out of the situation that caused you to be so compassionate for them in the first place. That's practical. Giving people skills, giving people knowledge, giving people understanding. Okay? Just carrying people forever is a misuse of your compassion. As I said, it's all right to carry a person for a space. We all need that, and maybe sometime you might need to be carried for a while. So don't let pride get in your way. Let somebody else's compassion help you. Let them have that wonderful feeling that you get when you have helped another person. Okay? So certainly carrying a person, taking their burden for a little while and helping them can be productive, because it can get them to the point where, right now, I'm feeling so much better now. I think I can take back whatever, or it's gone now, so we can throw it away, or yeah, I can move on now. Thank you very much for your assistance, that type of thing. But it's when somebody just lets you carry them, carry them, carry them, carry them. That's bad enough. One, what if there's a whole pile? Another person jumps on. Another person jumps on. That happens to some people. You may recognize it in people around you. And if you do, just have a look at yourself. Because sometimes what we recognize in other people is going on with us. Not always. Often, though, it has done in the past. That's how come we can recognize it. So, yeah, just be careful. You want your compassion. You certainly do. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful aspect of spirituality, compassion. It really is. But you need to be able to master it and use it wisely, use it constructively. And that way, compassion, dispassion, working very well together, helping you build that spiritual strength. Because when you think about it, how strong is that? How strong is it to have that balance between what we've been talking about, what compassion is, and what I've spoken about, what dispassion is in a previous video. So if you're doing these videos randomly, not doing it in the order that I have done them in, then please, if you haven't looked at the video on dispassion, please do so, because it really goes hand in hand with this one. And I'll leave you with that for now, and thank you very much for listening to me.